Undertale is an amazing game that makes you laugh and warms your heart. But it also holds a lot of secrets underneath its surface. You can easily play through the game without getting too deep into any of the secret lore, but once you start to look into it, there is a lot of small details that you can connect together for a full picture of the story. One aspect of Undertale has divided the fans since the beginning: the nature of the original fallen human. This human is commonly referred to as Chara or Chara, but I'll be using the pronunciation Chara since it resembles the word character. This name originates from the game itself. If you name your character Chara at the beginning of the game, you get a piece of text over it saying the true name. People have taken this to mean that Chara was the true name of the first child that fell into the underground. The same autumn when Undertale was first released, I made a small comic about my interpretation of Chara. If you're interested in seeing it, I still have the videos on my channel. For the sake of letting art speak for itself, I didn't really feel the need to explain every detail in the game that led me to create that comic. Well, here I am, over 6 years later, about to do just that. Since the release of the first chapter of Deltarune, the nature of Chara has resurfaced as a debate within the fandom. I feel like a lot of people are probably confused about the whole ordeal, especially if they only played through Undertale once years ago. In this video, I wanted to make a comprehensive guide explaining how Undertale builds up the mystery surrounding Chara, what the game finally reveals about the character, and how people have interpreted this information in different ways. I'll also get to the connection with Deltarune and Chris by the end of the video. But for now, let's start from the very beginning. When you start playing Undertale for the first time, you get a small scene of a child climbing up Mount Ebott in the year 2010X. The child seems to trip, fall, and end up deep underground, laying in front of mysterious ruins. The game then asks you to name the fallen human, and you probably name them with your own name or something similar. However, for the sake of clarity, I'll use the true name Chara from now on. The name shakes, grows larger, and you are shown a human child in a bed of golden flowers. If you open the menu, you see your name in the upper corner, so you'd immediately think that this character you're playing as is Chara. But this right here is when Undertale has already tricked you. You probably won't even notice it during your first playthrough, but none of the characters you interact with ever call you by your name. Toriel calls you my child, and nearly everybody else refers to you as the human. However, the name you picked comes up several times in other contexts during the game. If you die, you hear a deep voice saying, "Chara, don't give up," or "Chara, stay determined." When Undyne drops you off a cliff, you hear a mysterious person that seems to help you up after falling down. Chara, huh? That's a nice name. But before the voice can introduce themselves, you wake up in another bed of golden flowers. Before you approach King Asgore, you can visit the basements of his castle, which has an empty coffin with the name Chara engraved on it. This freaks most players out, since it seems that Asgore has already prepared a coffin for you ahead of time. This is not true, but you wouldn't know it by this point. When you first reach New Home, you learn that the king and queen of monsters used to have 2 children. One was named Asriel, and the other was a human that had fallen into the old ruins and eventually got adopted by the family. You learn that one day, the human got very sick and died. Before their death, they had wished to see the flowers from their village, but the monsters couldn't cross the barrier, which is keeping them all underground. However, after the human dies, Asriel is able to absorb their soul, and with the combined powers of 1 human and 1 monster soul, he can pass through the barrier. Asriel carries the human's body into a bed of golden flowers at the center of the human village. Unfortunately, the humans see Asriel and think this monster has killed the child. They attack Asriel, but he does not fight back. Wounded, Asriel manages to get back underground, still clutching the human's body. But sadly, he collapses into the king's garden and turns into dust, as all monsters do when they die. It's a tragic tale of the cruelty of the humans, and if you only played the neutral route of Undertale, that's how it would stay. Only when you reach the pacifist ending of Undertale, the true nature of the human named Chara is slowly revealed to you. Alphys grants you the access into her basement lab, which contains all sorts of dark secrets. In one of the rooms, you find a bunch of old VHS tapes. The first one has recordings of a dialogue between Toriel and Asgore back when Toriel was expecting her child. The second video shocks and confuses most players. Whoever is filming the video is talking to someone with the name Chara. These tapes are supposed to be very old, and when you're under the impression that this human who just fell here is also named Chara, it doesn't really seem to add up. From the context of the conversations, you might guess that the voice probably belongs to Prince Asriel. It's hard to figure out the true implications of the conversations in these videos when you're just playing through the game for the first time, but trust me, there's a lot going on here. We'll get back to that in just a second. When you're about to escape the lab, a mysterious voice that you've never heard before calls you and addresses you as Chara. You continue to Asgore and meet a bunch of your friends, but that's when Flowey appears and attacks everyone. He has managed to steal the human souls, and with their help, he absorbs all the monster souls from the underground to achieve his true form, Asriel Dreamer. I'll take a quick detour here to quickly go over how Asriel ended up as a flower, since I know a lot of people are still a little confused by that as well. In her lab entries, Alphys talks about her experiments with the golden flower. She mentions that the seeds just stick to you and won't let go. So, back when Asriel carried the human onto the golden flowers, some of their seeds likely got stuck to him, and when he turned to dust, the flower seeds also spread across the king's garden. Alphys also mentions that there is one special golden flower at the center of the garden that grew before all the other golden flowers, after the prince had died. Now, if you read some of the books at the Snowdin Library, one of them tells you that in monster funerals, the tradition is to scatter their dust on an item that they might have liked when they were still alive. This way, it is believed that their essence lives on in that object. So, when Asriel dies, his essence lived on in that first golden flower that grew from his dust. Alphys later has the great idea to inject determination into this golden flower, essentially giving the will to live for something that does not have a soul. The flower turns to life and escapes, becoming Flowey. Okay, back to Chara. As Asriel fights you, he calls you by the name Chara many times. He wants you to keep playing this game with him, because he isn't ready to say goodbye to you again. Because you're special. You're the only one that understands him, and he's afraid to be alone. You finally get to see an extension of the opening scene. The human you saw there was not the one you're controlling right now, but the human who originally fell down, and was found by Asriel. When you get to the end of the fight, Asriel finally admits the truth. You're not actually Chara. Chara was Asriel's adopted sibling, and they have been gone for a long time. The human we control tells Asriel that their name is actually Frisk. Asriel uses every soul inside of him to break the barrier, since as we have learned earlier, it takes nearly every monster soul of the underground to match the power of a single human soul, bringing the soul power inside of Asriel to the equivalent of 7 human souls. After all of your friends wake you up, they all call you Frisk now, because their souls were inside of Asriel when he learned your name. Except for Napstablook, who just closed the blinds when the soul-stealing apocalypse tried to come in. But if we only played as Frisk the whole time, why did the name Chara follow you around the whole game? Why did Asriel even think you were them? To find out, we first have to look deeper into the darker side of Chara. Now that we know that the old videotapes contain past conversations with Chara and Asriel, let's take a look at what they actually imply. In the second video, Asriel asks Chara to do their creepy face, but he accidentally forgot the lens cap on, and Chara refuses to do the face again. In the third video, Asriel tries to prank Chara, but Chara interrupts him, bringing up an incident when they tried to bake pie for Asgore, but used buttercups instead of cups of butter. Buttercups are highly poisonous, so the flowers made Asgore very sick. Asriel says he felt very bad about it, and he should have just laughed it off, like Chara did. This is the first bit of info that has been interpreted in multiple different ways. One view is that Chara poisoned Asgore on purpose, as a prank or even with more sinister purposes, and laughed about it afterwards. On the other hand, it might have truly been an accident, and maybe Chara even felt bad about what happened. But because Chara was a child, they couldn't process their emotions of guilt properly, and tried to laugh the whole thing off instead. Since we have so little information to go on, both interpretations are definitely possible, depending on how you view Chara as a whole. Asriel asks why Chara brought the incident up, and in turn Chara asks Asriel to turn off the camera. In the next video, it's implied that Chara explained their plan to Asriel off camera. Asriel is hesitant, but Chara convinces them to go along with the plan. While we aren't told directly what the plan is, the lines "We'll be strong," "We'll free everyone," and in a later video, "6, right? We just need to get 6." They all strongly imply that the plan involves combining their souls, walking through the barrier to get 6 more human souls, and shattering the barrier forever, letting the monsters go free. The video ends with Asriel saying that he'll go get the flowers. The video after that starts with Chara on their deathbed. During the video, Asriel whispers to Chara that he doesn't like this plan anymore. Here it is heavily implied that Chara poisoned themselves with the same buttercups that poisoned Asgore earlier. Personally, I feel like Chara might have only learned that buttercups were poisonous after Asgore ate them, and that's why they brought up the whole thing to Asriel. On the other hand, I guess you can also say that Chara knew about the poison and wanted to test it on Asgore or something, although I don't know why they would necessarily need to go that far. We know how things go from here. Despite Asgore praying for Chara to hang on, Chara died soon after getting sick. Asriel absorbed their soul and went to the surface. However, we will soon learn yet another side of this tale. After achieving the true pacifist ending, if you walk all the way to the first room where you fell, you'll find Asriel on the bed of golden flowers. When you talk to him enough, he reveals that Chara did not climb the mountain for a very happy reason. Apparently, Chara hated humanity very strongly, although they never told the reason why. It's implied that they must have gone through something traumatic and either wanted to escape or vanish altogether before they fell into the underground. Asriel also tells you that after Chara died and their souls were combined, Chara and Asriel actually shared the control over their body. When they got to the human village, they fought for control as Chara wanted to use their full power against the villagers, but Asriel resisted. And because Asriel resisted, they both ended up getting killed. Here we get to another point that people interpret in different ways. It is strongly implied that Chara wanted to kill humans, but to what extent remains unclear. Some think that Chara was manipulating Asriel from the very beginning, so that they would be able to cross through the barrier and destroy all of humanity with their new power. Since Asriel tells you that Chara was the one who decided to carry their body into the village of the humans, they could have planned that the humans would see the body and decide to attack them, and Asriel would have no choice but to fight back. Here, Chara's objective would have been just to kill as many humans as possible. However, this again relies on assuming that Chara had the worst possible motivation for everything they did. Maybe their plan really was to get 6 souls from the humans and free all the monsters. It's possible that Asriel was planning to gather these souls from humans that were already close to death, while Chara just wanted to get them as fast as possible. Chara may have hated humanity, maybe enough to want to get rid of them entirely, but so far we have nothing indicating that Chara wouldn't really have wanted to free the monsters. Finally, if we try to assume the best of Chara might have just wanted to defend themselves against a human attack by force. So Chara wanting to use their full power against the humans might have just been in self-defense. I know there are also people who want to view Chara as a misguided child who did nothing wrong. And up to this point, everything we know about Chara would have been possible to view in, if not positive, at least a neutral light. However, in the final conversation with Asriel, he admits that Chara was not the greatest person. He says that Frisk is the type of friend he always wishes he had, and he might have been projecting a little bit earlier. Based on how strongly Asriel felt about Gara during your final fight, I don't think this would have been very easy for him to admit. Therefore, I don't think we should doubt Asriel's words here. In the few exchanges we see between Asriel and Chara in the VHS tapes, Chara definitely seems to use some emotional manipulation to get Asriel to do what they want. But even if Chara wasn't a good person, there's still quite a large gap between a traumatized child who mistreated others around them, and a demon child that manipulates everyone to murder. And now we finally get to what has led many people to lean into the latter characterization, the so-called genocide route of Undertale. You start the genocide route the same as you would any other regular playthrough, but instead of pressing forward, you stay in one area and kill all the monsters you can find. After a while, you get a message saying, "But nobody came," and the whole mood of the game changes. When you reach Toriel's home and interact with the objects in the house, some of the descriptive text is different from other routes. When you interact with the kitchen cupboard, you get an ominous red message, which reads, "Where are the knives?" If you interact with the mirror, it says, "It's me, Chara." In a regular run, the message is, "It's you," instead. It seems that killing all those monsters has changed you, and the spirit of Chara has now taken over. After you've killed Toriel, Flowey has a little chat with you. In this route, he says, "You're not really human, are you? No, you're empty inside, just like me. In fact, you're Chara, right? We're still inseparable after all these years. Listen, I have a plan to become all-powerful, even more powerful than you and your stolen soul. Let's destroy everything in this wretched world." This tells us several things. First, it confirms that the one in control is Chara, Asriel's childhood friend. Second, Chara is now not human and empty inside, just like Flowey. We never heard what happened to Chara's soul, but after Asriel died with Chara's soul inside of him, it might have been lost forever. This version of Chara seems to not have a soul anyway. Third, Chara now has a stolen soul, which is the human heart that we still move around as we play. While the genocide route dramatically changes many events of the game, we only learn more about Chara after we reach New Home. Chara's voice echoes in most of the descriptions in this area. The mirror only shows Chara, once again. Checking the beds in the children's room says, "his bed and my bed." If you equip the knife, the narration says, "about time." And if you wear the heart-shaped locket with "best friends forever" engraved on it, it says, "right where it belongs." One of the more fun comments is the red "no chocolate" when checking the fridge, which has convinced many people that Chara really liked chocolate. If you check the calendar, it says "the day I came here." In a normal route, the calendar is shown to be from the year 2010X, and a date is circled on it. This confirms that the beginning cutscene of Undertale shows Chara, who fell into the ruins in the 2010s. Therefore, the entirety of the game takes place in the far future, possibly by hundreds of years. Flowey appears once again, and he explains what happened to him after he woke up as a flower. Soon, after he mentions that all the characters in this world turn boring eventually, he starts to address Chara directly. "But you're different. I never could predict you, Chara." He says that after you appeared, he was unable to use save points, because Chara's determination was even greater than his. Next, Flowey asks some questions that may have been on our mind for a while too. "I only have one question for you, Chara. How did you get back to the ruins from here?" Wait, I know. She must have taken you when she left, and decided to give you a proper burial, rather than hanging out in the basement forever. But why then? What made you wake up? Did you hear me calling you? This explains to us that when Toriel left Asgore and moved to the ruins, she took Chara's body with her. Before his death, Asriel carried the body back underground, so for some time the body was stored in a coffin in the basement. So when we saw an empty coffin with your name engraved on it, it was the original Chara's coffin, where the body had now been removed. Toriel gave the body a proper burial in the ruins, and we can already guess which spot she picked. The first room where you fell, with a bed of golden flowers. The seeds must have gotten stuck to Chara's body as well, so they grew after the body had been buried there. Flowey's second question is even more interesting. We know Chara was buried in the spot where Frisk fell, but what made them wake up? After all, this is the same place where humans typically fall, and 6 humans have fallen into the underground before Frisk. Considering everything, I think Flowey might be onto something with his question, "Did you hear me calling you?" Even if Flowey has lived pretty long through saves and resets, on a linear timeline, he was a pretty recent experiment. Alphys created him, and Alphys doesn't seem to be any older than an average monster. And the large majority of the monsters in the underground can't even recognize a human anymore, because it's been so long since the previous human. So we can assume that Frisk is the first human that fell into the ruins after Flowey came to existence. If you remember, when the game asks you to name the fallen human in the very beginning, the name shakes and grows large, almost as if someone shouts the name. I know this is purely speculation, but I believe that by calling the name of the fallen human in the beginning, Chara is brought back to life, possessing the body of Frisk. But is it possible that someone other than Flowey called Chara's name here? Flowey continues his chat. Chara, there's just one thing left I want to do. Let's finish what we started. Let's free everyone. Then, let's let them see what humanity is really like. To me, this seems to confirm that their plan to break the barrier and free all monsters was a mutual one. It also makes me wonder if it was also Chara's plan to show Asriel what humanity is really like. It's kill or be killed out there. Still, Asriel getting killed didn't seem to be a part of the plan. Flowey also seems to believe that even if Asgore has refused to show Flowey the 6 human souls, he would do it for Chara. It sounds like Chara might have been quite close with Asgore. Towards the end of Flowey's speech, the tone starts to change. You're the only one who understands me. You won't show me any worthless pity. Creatures like us wouldn't hesitate to kill each other if we got in each other's way. So that's why... What is this feeling? Why am I shaking? Hey, Chara, no hard feelings about back then, right? Hey, what are you doing? Back off! I've changed my mind about all this. You should go back, Chara. This plays fine the way it is. Stop making that creepy face! This isn't funny! You've got a sick sense of humor. A lot of people probably come to the conclusion that this is the true nature of Chara. A creepy child with a sick sense of humor who wouldn't hesitate to kill their best friend. However, we need to consider that at this point of the game, both Asriel and Chara don't have their souls, and we're also at the end of the run where we have killed every monster in the underground that we have got our hands on. But wasn't it Chara who willingly and happily killed all those monsters? There may be some truth to that, if we only consider Frisk as a controlled soul and Chara as an evil spirit possessing Frisk. However, we should also talk about the possibility of a third entity. You, the person who is playing the game. Undertale has a strong meta-narrative woven into its story. If you kill Toriel and restart from the last save point because you felt bad about it, Flowey calls you out on it. The words from both Flowey and Sans imply that the game knows that you're probably not playing the genocide route because you want to be evil, but because you can, and you want to see what happens. Flowey even calls out the people who might be watching the genocide route on stream or YouTube because they don't want to play through it themselves. When you restart the game after achieving the pacifist ending, Flowey appears and begs you to let the game go and let Frisk live their life. It really feels like he is talking to you through your screen, but in the end, he still refers to you as Chara. So I think while you might be able to look at Chara as only a character in the game, they also seem to be tightly connected to you, the player. After all, you named them, and many of us likely used our own name while doing so. If we accept that Chara possesses Frisk right at the start of the game, we also see that at this point, we can still choose to kill or not to kill. Once the player has made the action to kill enough monsters, Chara starts to surface more clearly. But they were already there from the start, and it's the player who still makes all the choices. And when we kill, Chara's EXP increases. And as Sans explains to us, EXP and LV, standing for execution points and level of violence, measure someone's capacity to hurt. The more you kill, the easier it becomes to distance yourself. And the more you distance yourself, the easier it is to hurt others, and the harder it is for others to hurt you. By choosing to kill, we are slowly turning Chara into a creature that only exists to hurt others. The only kills that we as the player don't have a choice on are the second hit that kills Sans, and the attacks on Asgore and Flowey at the very end of the run. Here Chara seems to act by themselves, brutally, uncaring for the sobbing face of their past friend. You might say that the player being a separate entity in the narrative is purely speculation. It's true that the game never mentions the player directly, and pretty much every line that seems to address the player could be interpreted as only addressing a character in the game. Still, in my opinion, the narrative at the end of the genocide route just works better with the player included. This is the first and only time when we get to see and hear Chara as they appear before us. Greetings. I am Chara. Thank you. Your power awakened me from death. My human soul, my determination, they were not mine, but yours. At first, I was so confused. Our plan had failed, hadn't it? Why was I brought back to life? You, with your guidance, I realized the purpose of my reincarnation. Power. Together, we eradicated the enemy and became strong. HP, attack, defense, gold, EXP, LV. Every time a number increases. That feeling. That's me. Chara. Now we have reached the absolute. There is nothing left for us here. Let us erase this pointless world and move on to the next. No? How curious. You must have misunderstood. Since when were you the one in control? Okay, there is a lot to unpack here. First, Chara states that our power awakened them from death. I believe this might have happened because we named Chara and called out their name. We, a human person behind the screen who is determined to finish the game, are basically playing as Chara, who is using our name, soul and determination. However, you can also argue that they are talking to Frisk. Other humans have fallen into the same spot before, but maybe Frisk was the first one who possessed so much determination that it woke up Chara's spirit from death. But if Chara was only addressing Frisk here, I feel that the imagery in this scene would be different. Chara is not shown in a traditional battle screen, but just floating in the void, staring directly at you. And when Chara comes to get you, they grow very large, like they are trying to jump scare the player. And instead of targeting the human heart, the slash goes through the whole screen, directed at you. Second, Chara clearly says that they did not have a clear desire for anything after they were brought back to life. They were just confused. And the last thing they remembered is that their plan had failed. If you look at the wording here, Chara specifically says our plan had failed, instead of my plan. This to me seems to further reinforce that Chara and Asriel shared the same goal of collecting 6 human souls and freeing all the monsters, even if they disagreed on the methods. And after Chara's spirit was resurrected, you guided them towards the path of destroying lives for more power. So either the player is controlling Chara directly, who then controls the body of Frisk, or the player controls the character of Frisk, who in turn guides Chara to this purpose. But in the end, it is up to the player to choose fight or mercy. And after you've showed Chara the way to get stronger, they thirst for more power. Since they associate themselves with any increase in numbers, they seem to yearn to increase their strength, be more in control, and if you consider the meaning of EXP in this game, the power to distance themselves and to hurt less. Finally, after you reach the maximum possible level of violence, there is nothing in this world for Chara or you. If you refuse Chara's offer, Chara thinks it's curious. You are not the one in control anymore. You've made them too powerful, and now they will choose what happens next. Maybe you could interpret Chara's words here to mean that they always had the full control, but based on everything I've talked about, I just don't think that's the case. Either way, the world is gone. If you wait a bit, Chara will agree to restore the world for the exchange of your human soul. This will bring the game back, but it will affect any future pacifist runs you do in the game. After the credits, you either see red-eyed Chara wake up in Frisk's bed in Toriel's house, or a photo of Chara surrounded by all of your friends with their faces crossed out. Both versions also come with creepy music and laugh. Though not directly confirmed, it does seem like this version of Chara wants to destroy the good ending by taking over your soul at the end of the game and harming those we care about. But who knows? It could technically be just Chara acting creepy to destroy your good vibes, not letting us get closure. There is one more thing we need to address. If the player decides to go through another Genocide run after everything has reset, there is another set of intriguing dialogue that you get from Chara. Chara. The demon that comes when people call its name. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter where. Time after time, I will appear. And, with your help, we will eradicate the enemy and become strong. But you and I are not the same, are we? This soul resonates with a strange feeling. There is a reason you continue to recreate this world. There is a reason you continue to destroy it. You are wrapped with a perverted sentimentality. I cannot understand these feelings anymore. Despite this, I feel obligated to suggest, should you choose to create this world once more, another path would be better suited. Now, partner, let us send this world back into the abyss. Here is the first, and to my knowledge the only time, when Chara is referred to as a demon. And at the end point of the Genocide route, they might as well be called one. I find it really interesting that Chara does say here that they appear when people call its name, which supports that Chara wakes up to us calling their name. But with you choosing the same awful route twice, even Chara can't understand your actions. Probably part because they have lost all ability to feel for other people at this point, but they do also try to guide you to play through another route next time. Whether this is to serve their own needs, or because they feel weirded out by you bringing everyone back to life only to kill them again, we can't say for sure. As a final note of the complicated Frisk-Chara the player triangle, Chara specifically says here that you continue to recreate and destroy this world, not them. And it can't be Frisk either, because at the end of the pacifist run, Flowey begs you to not reset the world, so Frisk can live their life on the surface with everyone. No matter which action is attributed to which character, I feel that the only one with the power to reset the whole game is the player. Note that both Flowey and Chara use the capitalized "you" in these sections. That really seems to emphasize that they are talking to the other side of the screen. It has become a fairly common misinterpretation that the two extreme routes of Undertale represent the two intertwined playable characters. In the pacifist route, you would play as Frisk, who wants to show everyone mercy. In the Genocide route, you would play as Chara, a demon child who takes over to kill everyone. But the whole triangle between Frisk, Chara, and the player is at times honestly so convoluted that I think they're all present in every route. At least there are many signs that Chara is present in all routes of Undertale. No matter the route, when we first fall to the garbage dump, we get a flashback of Chara meeting Asriel for the first time. Every time we die, we keep hearing Asgore's words on Chara's deathbed. In the final battle with Asriel, we get a little extended flashback of Asriel and Chara growing up together, which could be interpreted as Chara's memories. In fact, there's a fairly popular theory that Chara is the narrator of Undertale, because sometimes the narration says things that only Chara would know or say. I'll link the Tumblr post describing the theory below, but here is the basic summary of the evidence. The narration of the game is only from a first-person view in some lines that clearly refer to Chara. In all the other cases, it refers to Frisk in the second person. If you look at the drawing of a monster that has absorbed a human soul, the narration says that there is something very disturbing about this drawing. If you tell Washua dirty jokes, you tell a joke about two kids who played in the flower garden, or a kid who slept in the soil. In the encounter with Snowdrake's mother, the narration tries to suggest mean things for you to say, and is surprised when you don't say them. You laugh, and keep laughing. It's so funny. You can't stop. Tears run down your face. What? You didn't do that? And finally, the mirror in Toriel's house usually says, "It's you." But if you visit it after the pacifist ending, it says, "Still just you, Frisk." While there are no clear contradictions to this, Chara might not be literally narrating the whole game. The narration might be a combination of Frisk's thoughts and opinions, and Chara's memories that are flowing into Frisk from their spirit. Okay, let's do a quick recap of everything that we know of Chara for sure, based on what the game tells us or implies very directly. In 2010X, Chara climbs the mountain for a not very happy reason. Chara falls to the underground and gets injured, but Asriel hears their calls. Asriel leads Chara to their home, and in time, Chara and Asriel become like siblings. At some point, Chara tells Asriel that they hate humanity. Chara and Asriel make pie for Asgore, but put in buttercups that make him really sick. Asriel feels bad, but Chara laughs it off. Chara comes up with a plan and convinces Asriel to go along with it. The plan involves Chara dying from the buttercup poisoning, Asriel absorbing their soul, them crossing the barrier together, and taking 6 souls from the humans to free all the monsters. The plan works until Chara demands to use their full power on the humans, but Asriel refuses. As a result, they get gravely wounded, stumble back home, and collapse in the garden. Chara's body is first stored in the basement, but later taken by Toriel and buried to the ruins, the first room of the game. After many years, Frisk falls down in the spot where Chara is buried, and Chara's soulless spirit wakes up from death. Based on your actions in the game, Chara either stays in the background, providing at least some of their memories to Frisk, or, if you choose to kill extensively, Chara becomes stronger and soon takes over Frisk. If you go through the whole Genocide route, Chara turns into a demon-like creature that eventually destroys the world. Even if you trade your soul for the ability to restart the game, Chara will be there to mess up your happy ending. In the end, the true nature of Chara is still somewhat left up to interpretation. I know that the complexity of Undertale's characters and the overall merciful nature of the game has made me leaning towards the interpretation that Chara might not have been all bad. We do have some details that make Chara seem more human, at least when they were alive. Both Chara and Asriel were heart lockets that said best friends forever. Chara did genuinely seem to like the golden flowers, since they also drew pictures of them. They might have knitted Asgore a sweater that said Mr. That Guy. They do seem to like chocolate. And finally, there is also a bit in the canon Undertale Winterclock dialogue, where Toriel mentions that someone who is likely Chara always used to fill their glass up to the rim with water, because it was more efficient that way. Asriel soon started copying this behavior. But you can also make the argument that Chara mistreated Asriel quite badly. Asriel still feels guilty for letting them both die, just because he didn't want to kill humans. Asriel also calls himself a crybaby, and it seems that Chara enforced this a lot, telling Asriel that big kids don't cry, so that he would go along with Chara's plans. But enough details are omitted that there remains multiple ways you can view Chara as a person. And that's all fine, as long as you remember that other interpretations might work just as well. I just personally find the story of a mean child who had potential to be better, but died prematurely and might turn into a demon as a result of the player's actions, to be a more compelling narrative than a demon child was always bad and eventually reaches their full power through murder. So the first one is what I'm sticking with for now. And that's where Undertale left us. That would be the end of it too, if it weren't for Deltarune. Because since the release of the first chapter of Deltarune, people have been wondering, what's the deal with Chris? And are they connected to Chara in some way? Since Deltarune takes place in a separate universe, and no character named Chris exists in Undertale, I think we should still consider Chris as their own character. However, in many ways, they seem a lot like a combination between Frisk and Chara. Their name is almost an anagram for Frisk, and we know how much these games love anagrams. Chris's skin and hair tones are also the exact same we see in Frisk, while Chara looks completely different. The history of Chris, however, is very much like Chara's. They are a human child adopted into the Dreamer family, with Asriel as their brother. In Deltarune, however, Asriel seems to be somewhat older than Chris. At the end of the first chapter, Chris wakes up in their bed, reaches up to their chest, pulls out a heart, and throws it into a birdcage. They then slowly raise a knife, and their eyes flash bright red. With good reason, most of the fandom's thoughts immediately went to Chara by this point. It has to be mentioned though, that although Chara is popularly portrayed with red eyes, In Undertale they only have them in one of the bad pacifist endings for a brief while. But even if this heartless Chris reminds many of Chara, I would argue that the regular Chris is also very similar to Chara. While Chara's personality has always remained a bit of a mystery, if you said that the personality of the regular Chris was exactly the same as Chara's, I don't think it would contradict any information that we know of Chara. Both Chris and Chara are described as creepy by other characters at some point. Chris seems to like doing relatively mean pranks, like scaring Noelle multiple times. Chris doesn't seem to have any other friends, but is likely close with Asriel. For example, they often seem to Google when university summer vacation is, so they would know when Asriel comes home. Chris apparently also loves chocolate, as chocolate-based healing items restore more HP to them than others, plus they often sneak chocolate snacks from Toriel. Overall, I would say that in many ways, normal Chris reminds me of the kind of person Chara might have been when they were still alive, while the soulless Chris reminds me of the equally soulless undead Chara. Finally, if the connection between the player, Chara, and Frisk was quite vague in Undertale, the connection between the player and Chris seems to be central to the plot of Deltarune. In the beginning of Chapter 1, you are asked to create a vessel for yourself, and the voice asks for names for the vessel and the creator separately. When you save the game in the Dark World for the first time, it looks like the save slot has belonged to Chris, but as soon as you save, it gets replaced with your own name instead. Specifically the creator name instead of the vessel name. When Chris later rips their soul out, you can move the heart in the birdcage, but no longer have any control of Chris. In the fight with Spamton Neo in Chapter 2, Spamton asks Chris if they want to be a heart on a string forever, and the fight leaves Chris visibly upset. We seem to be once again playing as someone who takes over the main character, but this time Chris clearly tries to resist it. We only have the first 2 chapters of Deltarune out, so speculating any further seems pointless for now. I'm very much looking forward to learning more about Chris in the future parts, and we'll only have to see whether this brings us any closer to learning more about Chara as well. Thank you for watching this video! I haven't done any analysis videos like this before, but I'd love to make more in the future whenever I have time. Thanks for your time, and see you again!